Tonight feels really special for me. It feels like a full circle. I met Erika in Charlotte, North Carolina a few years ago. The Aspen Institute invited a few of us to learn about Latinos in the South, and that's where I met her. One night, we were drinking at the hotel lobby, and a few of us decided to call it a night, and we headed upstairs. And when we were in the elevator, I heard this person whispering, "I just got a book deal." And I looked back, and Erika was smiling. It was amazing. And so that book was the now New York Times bestseller and a National Book Award finalist, I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter. So this feels incredibly amazing. And I'm so grateful to be here to celebrate your new book. It's a memoir, Crying in the Bathroom, and we're here in your hometown of Chicago with these beautiful women and these beautiful people. So please, let's show Erika some love, and let's celebrate her publication date.
Thank you so much.
In her memoir, Erika writes about the journey to free herself from the constraints of being a Mexican-American poet from a working-class family. Erika's lyrical prose and her wit eases readers into difficult topics like abortion, depression, and feeling suicidal. Erika writes extensively about her lifelong battle with debilitating depression that started in her mother's womb, calling herself, jokingly, a suicidal fetus. Quote, "My umbilical cord almost strangled me when I was born." That same depression resurfaced at an unexpected time in her life. Erika was living her life, a life that she had dreamed. She was a successful writer, teaching at an Ivy League school, and in love. But she was also struggling with a new mental health diagnosis and a new medication. Erika found herself pregnant and suicidal. In her essay, A Difficult Son, she writes about how the abortion saved her life. The memoir will make you cry and laugh through tears. And at times, it can be a little raunchy too. But it discusses important topics that are not talked about in our culture. Sound interesting? Make sure you get a copy. So let's start the conversation. We will be taking audience questions at the end of the event, so make sure that you start thinking about it. Don't be shy. All right.
Oh, okay.
Let's do this. All right. Okay, so you wrote in your intro that throughout your writing career, you kept hearing this nagging sound, this nagging voice in your head that said, "Erika, who the F cares?" Right? So when did you give yourself permission to write this memoir?
You know, I asked that often throughout my life as I was writing, because I had never really, except for, a few exceptions, I never really saw people like me succeed in writing. I didn't know that we could even be writers, and so throughout, I wondered if what I was saying, what I was writing was relevant to anybody. And I felt that, I felt really insignificant as a brown girl. I felt like I was kind of invisible and that no one really cared about how I felt or what I had to say and, my ideas, my thoughts, my creativity even. And so that was just, it was recurring. And then as I was writing this memoir, which began in 2015, I had that nagging voice in my head again, like, who cares about your life? Like, why are you interesting? And so I learned to really, wrestle with that first and then understand that my story is important and that we matter, and why not write a book that, people like me could feel comforted by, seen by, challenged by, I don't know. So it took a lot of work to get through that.
Yeah. Was there a specific thing that happened that you were sort of interested in and really honing into this memoir? Was there a turning point for you?
I don't know. I guess I'm not sure what the question is, so if you could just clarify a little bit.
So maybe let's kind of think about it in this way. So you talk about how you didn't feel seen, and you often talked about how you felt invisible, you didn't have anyone to sort of listen to you and your thoughts. So when did you decide, my story is valuable, let me write this?
It came after Mexican Daughter had been picked up, and that gave me such audacity. I was like, well, damn, if I could do that, then let me write something like even more challenging for myself. And so I started writing this memoir thinking about all the different people who have written memoirs who I greatly respected, women who had written about really difficult parts of their lives for the greater good. And so I felt really just kind of audacious, I was like, well, I want to say all of these things, and I'm going to say them no matter what, in some form or other, because it's a form of survival for me.
Your memoir has a little bit of a Sex and the Feeling vibe in some of those chapters, but featuring a Latina working class writer. How did you decide which stories to write about and which stories to leave out?
There's just so much more that I did not include, and so people are like, wow, you wrote your whole life. I'm like, actually, there's a lot more, and I don't want to write about it. There are certain things that I'm just like, yeah, let's just, table that and move on. But yeah, it's a vibe that perhaps was influenced by Sex and the City, because I watched it a lot when I was in college, just relentlessly, because I was depressed and trying to escape. And it's a show that's incredibly problematic. We could talk about that forever. But at the time, it was this sense of solace, because I was like, well, I'm a single woman, trying to date and have sex, and it was kind of exciting, And so there are some stories that maybe I will get to, including the time that I went to a strip club in Oaxaca, because that one I feel like I need to write about.
Wow, I can't wait to hear about that. So, one of the themes of your book is this battle with darkness. And depression got a grip of you very early on. You write that you were about 13 the first time that you considered taking your life. I want you to read a section.
Sure.
And I want you to talk about the coping mechanisms that you had at that point. And because I think it's really relevant to folks who don't necessarily have the language.
Yeah.
My depression is the first paragraph.
My depression always made happiness a fickle and fleeting son of a bitch. It didn't have a name or shape then, was something I couldn't understand or articulate. A container for my grief. All I knew was that there was a sadness that hovered over me like a sticky cloud, made it hard to live. I was able to pinpoint specific moments when I believed I was happy, but it never lasted for extended periods of time. I found most of my solace in reading, writing, and music. Happiness was abnormal, something worthy of applause and celebration. If I was in a good mood for longer than a few hours, it was almost astonishing. I was angry at being alive, at having to exist in human form. I wanted to disappear. I began thinking of suicide when I was about 13. Sometimes I take my busted boombox into the bathroom to drown out the sound of my crying as I showered.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it sure is.
And so you were growing up in a traditionally Mexican household. So how did you cope? What coping mechanisms did you have back then?
You know, I didn't feel that I could share this with anyone. You know, like my parents were already suffering and struggling and working in these terrible factories, being mistreated. And I carried a lot of guilt about that. Like, I felt bad that they had to do that. And then for me to then, on top of it all, to tell them that I'm depressed or that I'm sad, or it just didn't even really occur to me. You know, I didn't think that I could ever say that. And so the coping was, you know, sometimes healthy, sometimes unhealthy. I read a lot. I lost myself in books. I wrote a lot. You know, I experimented with drugs when I was, you know, in high school, and I was just trying to stay alive, you know, and like I didn't know how to do that in a healthy way for the most part. And so it was really a struggle for a long, long time.
You know, one of the things that was really interesting about your novel is also the way that you write about spirituality and your journey in that, from being Catholic to atheist to Buddhism. So how does your spiritual practice help you cope with your mental illness?
I think that Buddhism has really clarified a whole lot for me in terms of like why we're here and what does life mean, and you know, those big questions that I couldn't answer before that really bugged me, because I felt like Catholicism was telling me to like obey my husband and, you know, bow down to men in general and feel inferior because I am a woman, and none of that like sat right with me ever since I was a kid. And so when I finally was able to like explore Buddhism, I felt like it was a religion that just was so logical, like cause and effect. The things you do affect the world, you know, and also everything's interrelated, which I learned through poetry. And this idea of, you know, containing multitudes and being, you know, really vast, and kindness, you know, all of that for me was so nourishing. And so I decided that was something that I was going to practice.
I love the way that you talk about the suffering part and how that played into your struggles with depression. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think during the time that I encountered this form of Buddhism, I was going through a terrible, terrible time, and I was like really unhappy. I was like in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in for a long time, you know. There were so many different factors that like caused and contributed to my poor mental health. And then with the Buddhism, I felt like hopeful again, like there was something I could do again, like the cause and effect. If I change something, then perhaps my life will be different. And then, you know, I got a divorce, and then I went to Princeton, and, you know, like I did all sorts of cool stuff after that. But it took that courage to be like, I'm not happy. This is not the life that I want.
Mm-hmm. You know, I found myself laughing through tears often. And you write a lot about how funny you are. You write, I'm a clown at heart. I find humor in a tube sock. So tell me how you've used humor to get through difficult times and how you're using humor in your writing.
Yeah, well, first of all, the person who laughed the hardest was my husband right now. I do think I'm very funny, actually, and I'm very proud of that. But no, I use humor as a way to just, get through. There are times where I'm like, everything is stupid. What's the point? And then I'll think of something funny, and then it just kind of like makes it all better. And to me, humor is a way to kind of lessen the blow of so many different traumas, And so I think Mexicans are very familiar with this. We're always laughing, we're always joking, and I think that's a really beautiful trait, to be able to do that. And I've been influenced by such wonderful comedians. I've always loved comedy. I love George Carlin and Richard Pryor and now Ali Wong, et cetera. I love the tradition of just talking shit, I just love it. And my husband is an epic shit talker, and so I think that's why we fell in love really fast.
Yeah, I can see that. So I wanted to ask you about your role models, and you can talk about the fictional ones and the real ones.
Okay, well, I have many. As a child, we didn't have exposure to a lot of different media, and so I was really hooked on The Simpsons. I'm still quoting them, and everyone's looking at me what are you talking about? But The Simpsons was such an important part of my upbringing. It gave me a lot of joy. And one of the characters, Lisa Simpson, was, she's so bold. She talked a lot of shit. She was really just trying to right the wrongs that she saw. And I found that to be incredibly encouraging as a young girl who also was mad about a lot. And so I was like, well, this cartoon character seems to have it all figured out, so I want to be like her. And it always, was a part of my life. Even now, I just talk about it all the time. And so anyway, I think I'm just going on this rant about The Simpsons, so excuse me for that. What was the question?
Well, I think that one of the things that came across in that when you were writing about Lisa Simpson is that the women around you didn't have a voice. And here was this character
yes.
that did,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah, well, growing up, I had all these very resilient women in my life, but their lives were tough, factory and then going home and cooking and cleaning and usually the husband wasn't as involved, and so it's just I didn't want that. I was like, no, thank you. And so I learned a lot from them, but the role models that I had were, well, one, a fictional character, and then also Sandra Cisneros, who really paved the way for me to be here, and so I give so much credit to her and all the barriers she broke. I mean, when I started reading her poetry at the age of 14, I was like, wait, she is in Europe and she is going on adventures and she is having sex, whoa, it really inspired me, I wanted to do that too. And then I did.
I can understand
Thank you, Sandra.
So,
I just want to thank you for your honesty and your transparency and just your no fucks given attitude, because it is so liberating to read that and be like, other people are going through this stuff too. And I'm also curious to hear, because I hear you on the not caring what the guy in Missouri has to think, but like, what about your family? Like, did you ever like tense up, like, maybe this is a story they've never heard before and you're putting it on paper? Because
oh, sure.
yeah, like I'd love to write, but that's scary.
Yeah, I've tensed up about it, but then I've gotten over it. You know, I'm like, so what? You know, like my brothers are gonna be mad. Like, please, it's just not gonna happen. And then also, you know, my tia's reading it. I don't care. You know, like honestly, like I feel like not to be flippant about it, but it doesn't matter to me what other people think about my life. Like to me, the truth is what motivates me in writing. And if I'm not writing my truth, my messy, fucked up truth, then it's not gonna be good. You know, like it's dishonest. And so I really encourage women to stop caring about being likable or, you know, acceptable in society, yes. You know?
I love that. I think we're going to have our last question here.
Wait, did we have one in the middle?
Oh, I think it was here.
Okay, right up front. We'll be able to add one last question after this.
Oh, we didn't.
Hello, I'm so excited to meet you, Erika.
Hi.
My name's Lorenza. I have a question for you who cares about my mask? Anyway, so my question to you is, first of all, yay that you went into therapy. I was the first person in my family, and we're huge. And first I was la loca for years until my nieces started, you know, going to therapy, and they got. So my question for you is, how did your family react to you becoming Buddhist? You were raised in a Catholic family, and did any of them get influenced to follow Buddhism?
Oh, interesting. Well, I think once it was clear that I had a mental illness, everyone's like on board to get me help, and that was really great. But I guess with Buddhism, it's surprising to say this because I never imagined it, that my mother was like, oh, okay, like maybe this will bring you some peace. And it was really lovely to have her accept me in that way, you know? And so like, there wasn't like a back and forth with that. And everyone else in my family is like, cool, whatever. You know, like I think at that point that nothing surprised them. And so it was just a mild thing, you know? And it's great. I have a great relationship with them now, and everyone's so supportive.
I think we have time for one more. I think Asha back there. Or, let me see. Who was raising their hand? Maybe right here.
This is the last question, and we have the book signing right after this, outside.
Hello. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you and see you. I look forward to reading your book. Something that you mentioned today is like how, as you know, being I also, you know, Mexican immigrant household, and it's so hard to talk about, you know, being depressed and talking to our parents. I don't know about you, but personally, I had that tendency of blaming them for not understanding me. And you even said it now, like I understand that they didn't understand. So how did you come to that realization, and what helped you?
It took like 37 years to get to that point, maybe. And also just therapy, writing, reflecting, talking, thinking deeply, and like really coming to terms with the fact that so many of our parents have been terribly traumatized by so many different things. And, you know, they were working in conditions that were really difficult. And I think having that empathy has really helped me heal in many ways, because I'm like, they were trying their best in the circumstances they were in. And there's nothing I can do to change that. I have to accept it. And that's the only way that I'm going to heal, is to like understand that life is really complicated, and you know, sometimes we do things that we never thought we'd do, and sometimes we are disappointed by people, and, you know, anything can happen. And so just really like embracing all of the messiness and understanding that people are flawed, including myself, like that has really healed a lot. Thank you.
So let's give Erika a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. I love Chicago.